Okay, good evening and welcome to those online and here with us tonight. Welcome to the meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee. It's Tuesday the 20th of January 2026. I'm Councillor Alison Jay, Councillor for Highwards Ward and Chair of this committee, and I'll be chairing this evening. Action in the event of an emergency. There are no practice alarms planned for this evening, so if an alarm sounds, please evacuate the Town Hall by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street and then to the car park behind the Town Hall in St Ronald Street. This meeting is being held in the Grand Jury Room in the Town Hall in Colchester and is also being broadcast live over the internet, where it can be watched via the Council's YouTube channel, where the recording will be available to view afterwards. Please would speakers use microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone. Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers, and visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please use them discreetly, set them to silent, and do not use voice or camera flash functions. There are toilets on every floor in the building and an induction loop in this room if required. We will have a short break at 7:30 p.m. I will now ask members of the committee and attending officers to introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Good evening, Lindsay Barker, Deputy Chief Executive.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor Dave Harris, Deputy Chair of this committee. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Councillor Natalie Summers and St John's Ward.
Sam McLean, Newtown and Christchurch.
Councillor William Sunnox, Rural North Ward and the Conservative spokesman on finance.
Good evening, Councillor Paul Dundas, Tiptree Ward.
Matthew Evans, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you. As substitutions, we don't have any substitutions this evening, and Councillor Sarah Naylor will be joining us shortly. Urgent items, we're not aware of any urgent items this evening, so we can move on. Item 4, declarations of interest. Councillors are asked if there's any items on the agenda about which they have a disclosable pecuniary interest or any other registrable interest or non-registrable interest, which would prevent them from participating in any discussion of the item or any vote on the item. Do I have any disclosed interests? None. Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting. Can committee members confirm that the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of December 2025 are a correct record? Okay, agreed. And item 6, no registrations for have your say. So we will move on to the core business. And our first item's the mid-year internal audit assurance report 2025. And Hayley McGrath, our corporate governance manager, will be coming to talk to us. Welcome, Hayley.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. So I've been joined tonight by Claire and Olu, who are from our auditors tier. They're the ones that have carried out the majority of the work on the audit assurance levels, and any questions relating to the actual reports that have been produced and the recommendations they'll be able to answer in more detail than I will. But I just wanted to go over the mid-year report for you very briefly. It's attached at Appendix 1 and it sets out the audit performance excuse me, between the 1st of April and the 30th of November last year and the audits that were carried out. So we had 13 audits completed. 4 of those achieved a substantial rating, which is the highest level rating that we can have. And 6 of the remaining audits achieved a reasonable rating, which is good. It's nothing terrible with a reasonable rating. It means that all of the systems are operating appropriately. There are just some minor areas where there could be improvements if required. 3 of the audits did achieve a limited assurance rating, and 2 of them were related to IT, and the other one was markets. And out of the recommendations, there were 5 priority ones, which is the highest level recommendation that we can have. So within the report, it sets out the recommendations for each of the audits that have been carried out. It sets out the scope and the areas that were looked at. With regards to the 2 IT audits, The actual recommendations have been redacted from the report due to the sensitive nature of the information that's contained within it. If they're not items that we would want in the public domain due to resilience and cyber security. However, you had a briefing on those reports prior to Christmas, so the head of IT, Darren Kidson, came along and gave you an update on those audits plus another one, and also the work that has been undertaken by the team in terms of cyber and security issues. So I think there's probably quite a few items within that report that you had the opportunity to discuss at before the December meeting, but obviously if there are items that you want to discuss under the IT audits, then we would ask to do that in a private session as opposed to part of this public meeting right now. The audit report shows that we provided an effective internal audit service for the first half of the financial year. And with our auditing programme, what you will find is there will be more audits reported in the second half than the first half. So when you get the year-end report, you will see more audit reports there because we need it for year-end assurance purposes to feed into our external audit process. So that's all I was going to say on the report for tonight. And any questions?
Do I have any questions from anybody? No, it looks like not. Well, thank you very much then. Have we got Old Councillor Sunnox?
Yes, I think we should have some questions given all the work that's gone into it, for which many thanks. Probably you better tell me if I get into sensitive area and you want to go into private session. But I think that it's right to say that there's some hesitance about the concerns about protecting the public service network. And that requires the cooperation of councillors, that's something where we need a solution. And I'm not quite sure could you just go over what your recommendation to dealing with the people side of it? Don't give us the technicalities in a public session, but what are the solutions you're recommending on the people side of it?
As in terms of the ability to use the equipment and the information and how we manage that? Is that the area that you're looking for?
Yes, how are we going to get a workable solution that makes councillors able to do their job, given that it's only a part of their activities, and at the same time protect the public service network? I know we've got to do GDPR as well, but it seems that the core data of the council, it is absolutely critical that we protect that. GDPR, very nice to make sure we're perfect on that, but really I see the risks as quite low. But the public service network, I think everyone would agree was high.
I think there has been quite a few changes that have been implemented recently, and that takes a little while for those changes to bed in, and I know there has been some concerns raised about how some of those processes have impacted in the ability for councillors to do their jobs. I also know that the head of IT and his team have been very proactive in terms of trying to assist with that. They are offering one-to-one sessions and talking through some of those issues and how they can be resolved and providing advice and guidance. But I think the portfolio holder would like to add a little bit to it. Councillor Pearson?
Yeah.
Chair, thank you. Yeah, I fully appreciate Councillor Sunnock's question and also some of the underlying concerns that have been expressed by members. I think it's fair to say that our interim IT lead came in and found that we were wanting in terms of our cyber security across the board. And we've had to work at pace to ensure that we are as safe as we can be, that we are meeting the standards. Unfortunately, Colchester Council's was probably near the back of or the bottom of the table in Essex. We're now getting towards the top of the table, but we still have a little way to go yet. All staff have been made aware over the last few months of the need to be secure in the way in which they use IT. Every member of staff, as far as I've been made aware, has undergone the IT training and the follow-ups as well. And so our staff now, I think, are fully au fait with the need to ensure that they're following the guidance and working in a secure way. Now, I appreciate that for councillors it's been a little bit more difficult, and I would suggest that the best way for councillors to be secure is to have a council provided device. The reason for that, and having worked with a work provided device in a secure way for, I was going to say 20 years, it wasn't quite, because we didn't have laptops until about 5 years into my role working in the criminal justice system. But certainly for the last decade and a half, I had a secure system, and I know that if anyone is using a council-provided piece of hardware, if anything happens to it, if it's hacked, if it's lost, if somebody manages to get a hold of it somehow, the IT team can immediately lock that particular piece of hardware. So that means it's safe and secure. So that's my advice and guidance for members, but I appreciate that some members don't want to or are reluctant to use a council-provided device. I know that the IT team are, as we speak, trying to source a reasonably costed device that would be smaller than the laptop that I'm using tonight, and could be used as a sort of semi-tablet, so that you could just put it in a carrier next to your own laptop, and it wouldn't be that heavy, and it wouldn't be that intrusive. But I appreciate that there have been difficulties. There are some concerns about how all of us act as councillors in terms of sharing information with our residents, sharing information with organisations with which we interact. There is nothing at all to prevent members from downloading anything that is in the public domain, but there is a restriction on downloading anything that isn't in the public domain, and that's where the dilemma comes in, and that's where we as members need to ensure that we are supporting and supportive of the need to robustly protect the council's systems, but most importantly to protect individual data that we all might be involved with. You know, I have constituents who will provide me with quite a bit of detailed personal information because they have an issue that then is passed on to one of the departments within the council. Now that data, if it were to leak, could be quite damaging for that individual or that family or that organisation. So I think we all have a responsibility. That said, as Hayley's already pointed out, the IT team are happy, and in the recent message that went out to all members and was reissued to all members at the beginning of the week, there is a link so that we can request one-to-one support. That doesn't have to be a one-off occasion. It can be whatever you need, whatever we need, in order to do the role, to undertake the role that we're elected to do, but to do that in a safe manner.
Yes, Paul?
Thank you. I don't want to dwell on the IT subject too long. I've sort of kind of said it before. My view on it is we're still coming at it from completely the wrong direction. What we're doing is we've got an existing system which has got security flaws, and we're trying to fit that around getting it to work, particularly for members, rather than actually looking at how councillors use most of the IT and saying, right, how do we actually come up with a system which works for their needs? Because what I've got on the screen here, I'm logged in. I don't need any of this. 98% of the stuff I can access through my login, I will never use and have no need to use. So why have we got the security risk of me having it? All I need is very basic email, most of which is about a garden fence or something, and a calendar. That's all I need. So why have I got all this other stuff and access to other things, which makes me a security risk? So that in itself, by effectively by not analysing what particularly councillors actually need for the system and giving them something completely different, which is actually vastly more complicated and vastly more access than they need, we have a huge security hole there because we actually haven't looked at what they actually want. Now, I use Gmail for most of my council email. That's how my residents contact me. Because we're making our email system so difficult, what's happening is councillors, and I've spoken to lots of them, they are moving more and more away from the council email system and more towards their own systems. First reason, I don't get alerts when I get a council email. I used to on my phone, even if it logged itself out. That's stopped. So if somebody's emailed me in a hurry and I've got to respond, I've got no idea I've got an email. I have to go into my phone, call up Outlook, select the Colchester account again, do all my login, do the thumbprint, and then it spends about 10 minutes trying to work out if I've got any new emails. I have to do that about 3 times a day just to know if I've got an email. That is not fit for purpose email in 2026, if we're honest with ourselves. You know, it should ping, and people expect instant responses, so that's why I don't use it. Our officers expect councillors to read that, know they've got an email. You know, I've never understood, and nobody's ever answered this. If I use Gmail, and millions of people use Gmail, am I a security risk to Google? I don't think I am, because otherwise Google would have been hacked by now. There should be the same security resilience between my email and use of the Colchester email as there is between me and Google. And if there isn't, there's something fundamental flaw in it. That's my take on it. I do have a council device. I keep forgetting it where it is because I turned it on the other day and I hadn't used it since the 1st of November, so it spent half an hour updating. I really should hand it back because it's money wasted and I'm hardly ever using it. But it is handy to have sometimes, and it's a nice laptop. It works fine. But I use probably about 5 or 6 other devices during the day. I'm not going to carry any individual laptop or any other device around with me just to find out whether somebody's had their rubbish collected because they had a late collection on their recycling, you know, in Tiptree. That's the level of most of the stuff. I perfectly accept, and I'm perfectly fine if you're accessing serious council data, particularly if it involves really serious, a major personal data, then I think I'm quite happy to go through the other levels of security, and I think I should. That's, yeah, I get the risk, and I'm not complaining about that, but I just think there hasn't been a proper analysis as to how most councillors are actually using the IT and what they're using it for, and I think we need to do that more and then design a system around that which doesn't have the security risk of letting them into a whole load of other stuff. That's just my take on it.
Councillor Pearson, do you want to respond?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I fully understand Councillor Dundas, and there is a small working group that's been established to look at all these things to ensure that members' views are taken account of and incorporated as much as possible. I don't use Gmail, so I'm slightly perplexed as to why you don't get notifications. I use Outlook on my phone and I get notifications.
Sorry, I do get notifications on Outlook for all my other accounts.
Right.
I don't get it for Colchester because once it's logged itself out, which it does automatically about 4 times a day, it seems, it no longer sends me any notifications. It used to, I think, and it might for an hour after I've logged in, but then I don't get any more notifications.
Okay. And I take your point about being able to access everything under the sun through the system. Some of us might want to do that. So it gives that. So Yeah, and I'll take back to our IT experts, see whether or not there isn't a way. I know from, again, my work in criminal justice, that there were levels of openness that were accessible not to everyone, and you had to have additional clearance to access some things. So, and those elements of the IT system were closed down, even though we all use the same laptop. So that may be something that can be done going forward as well, and I'll have a look into that.
Councillor Summers, you wanted to raise a question?
Yeah, I was more of just a response to what Paul was saying about the notification stuff, because I do get them on my phone. Nothing seems to have changed for me, so I don't know whether that's just something you need to maybe have a chat with the guys in the IT team just to make sure your settings are all right, because some things obviously changed for you when it hasn't for me, so there might be just a little tick box, something needs to be done there, I don't know, but also because I do use my phone as well for work, I don't know whether my phone has just that extra level of security on it as well, which might make things easier for me, I don't know.
Okay, so in terms of the actual internal audit report and any consideration of further review, do we feel that the IT is something, can I ask Councillor Pearson what the timeline is with some of the work that's going on in the smaller group, and what we're looking to achieve, and maybe a view from internal audit of where they think we should be going with the IT side, this limited assurance, making sure that we lift that up as soon as possible.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the small working group is scheduled to continue as long as we need it to continue. The work that the team are doing to ensure that we are as secure as we possibly can be is ASAP. And I know that the team are working through that as we speak. So we'll come back to you in the coming weeks, not months, because we're fully aware that tendering have been doing this for 6 years, I'm told, and other nearby authorities have got systems in place that we haven't had in place across the board. So I think that Darren Kidson and the rest of the team have been doing a remarkable job of moving at pace to get Colchester Council to the position that it ought to have been in some time ago.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if anybody from TIA wants to comment.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you can hear me okay. So, yeah, when we compare you to your peers, I think you're right to say also you've come a long way in a short period of time. And I think it's been very, very reassuring that they've been very open to having the audits as well, because we identified there were areas that did need to be strengthened. So I think it's mature as an organisation to take that and to try and learn from that as well. It is a balancing act in being able to service needs of individuals on that. But unfortunately, we are seeing more and more cyber. Cyber risk is the biggest risk that we're facing, and they're very complex in terms of how people are getting into systems. And you might think an additional level of a multi-authenticator is a concern and causing a lot of extra stress, which we understand can be when you're trying to serve your residents and your public. But unfortunately, you have to have those really to protect yourselves and avoid the risk as well. So I think it's been a really mature conversation you're having there to establish what access levels you do need to do as well to take forward as well. But I think it's a journey you need to go on and obviously make sure that you're the most effective as you can be.
Yes, Councillor Dundas.
Yeah, just because I don't have a particular problem with MFA. I mean, yes, it is a pain, but it is part of modern life. I mean, crikey, I have to do it to log into Netflix. You know, well, you do actually these days. You know, to do virtually anything these days, we have to have MFA, and it is a pain. Have to we all know it's a pain, but it is one of those annoying aspects of modern life. So I don't have a problem with that. I think it's just when restrictions get in the way of actually doing well. One, for example, I mean, I know I've asked a question about a lot of councillors print stuff off because I struggle to read on a screen because I've got poor close eyesight and it doesn't correct easy because I'm very short-sighted, so my long sight is fine corrected, but no matter what I do, I struggle sometimes reading off the screen. I have to have it over there when I'm working. for example, we've just had a load of civic office things out. When we come to Remembrance Sunday, it says print off your invite. So you need to print stuff occasionally, and I think that's a reasonable request. So, you know, I don't want to print off 900 pages of the council's council tax payers list and their addresses. You know, that's but basic stuff, an agenda, for example, for a meeting. I think when the downloading was turned off, I think I gave the example of the North East Shadow Board. I couldn't print any of the documents off of that. And I know the leader of the council always arrives at that meeting with everything printed off. So, you know, we just need to come up with a solution, okay, which is secure but allows practical use and reasonable use. That's my final comment. I don't want to bore everybody to death on this.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd just very quickly remind everyone that the documents that are published on our website, and that includes our committee agendas, our council agendas, are available to everyone and anyone, and there is no reason why you can't download and print those.
All the confidential information without multi-factor authentication.
That is a different matter. However, if you have a council device, then you can do that.
You can print.
You can print.
Print from a council device. You can connect up a printer.
Yeah.
Well, that's all right solution. But yeah, it's a good point that the really key financial information we get as councillors is not MFA protected.
Okay, has anybody got anything they want to say on the wider report? I know we have spoken about this in a pre-briefing, so okay. Well, thank you very much, Hayley and Talu and Claire for attending this evening and for the work that goes into it. It is a really detailed report, yeah, with a lot of information in it. I have read it all. Thank you very much. So moving on, online we've got Wayne Layton and Zoe Latham. I think we've decided this evening that it will be better to take item 7.3, which is the Treasury Management Strategy before the Q3 update. So if we could move to the strategy where committee will consider the report for the Treasury Management Strategy for 26-27.
Great. Thank you. Can members hear me?
We can, Wayne. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so I can't see you in the room, so I'm going to go through the presentation, and then if you have any questions, then please, if you can leave them to the end, that would be great. So what members have got before?
Wayne, I'm sorry, can I stop you? We're not seeing your presentation work before. Wayne, did you hear me? We're not seeing your presentation.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We just didn't get the presentation through.
It looked at home. It seemed like it had bombed out. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to share the presentation because it seems to be messing around with my internet. So essentially, Treasury Management Strategy sets out how we borrow, how we invest our income, and how we manage that risk. It forms a key part of the budget. So along with the revenue budget, we also have the capital programme, capital strategy and treasury management strategy. That's why the numbers within the treasury management strategy you have before you are subject to change, because if the administration decide to do something else with the capital programme, then essentially the numbers will be different, and then that will percolate through all of the other documents like the capital strategy, the revenue account, and the capital programme itself. The report looks at our borrowing strategy, make sure that we borrow cheaply, we make sure we've got certainty on how much we'll be paying out for our borrowing, and it's affordable. Crucially, it sets out that we have to follow the Prudential Code to make sure that all our borrowing is affordable, sustainable, and it's prudent in order to borrow. It sets out where we can borrow, so we can only borrow from people who meet our requirements, and we're advised on that by our treasury management specialists. And it also looks to set an operational boundary, which is the maximum amount that we could possibly borrow, and members are asked to approve that at full council decision, not one that's made at G&A. It also looks at how we invest our surplus cash, and we need to make sure that we've got security, and we've also got appropriate liquidity in order to be able to meet our cash flow. We need to make sure that we have the correct ESG requirements from people we invest with. So we wouldn't want to invest in organisations that support activities that are not in line with the council's views. Talk about the fact that we employ professional advisors, treasury management advisors, and those are MUFG for the next year. And we talk about how we invest our money, so what term and what our risk profile is, and we need to make sure that we don't invest our money all in one place up to a certain limit, and that's broken down within the report itself. And we also have mindful prudential indicators, so we make sure that when we're investing our income, we have an average credit risk, we have a minimum cash balance that we need to keep so that we can meet our peaks and troughs in our cash flow forecast. We have a mind for what our interest rate exposure is, so if we have a centred interest in base rates, what that will be. And then we talk about the maturity structure of our debt, and what that does is essentially says that what we wouldn't want to do is we borrowed all our money that would mature on the same day. Instead, we set a limit for the age of debt. So, for example, our debt today, 53% of that debt doesn't mature for another 20 years. So we wouldn't refinance that debt for another 20 years. And obviously, at the moment, where interest rates are high, what we're trying to do is make sure that when we borrow money, we borrow short term, because the forecast is that interest rates will come down over a period as advised by our treasury advisors. And as I mentioned, again, we need to make sure that we're within our operational boundary when we do borrow. And there's something I want to talk about, which is in the draft, in the Treasury Management Strategy you've got before you, there is Table 3, which looks at what our CFR limit is and how we're funding that. There's a couple of things I want to bring your attention to. So the figure in there differs slightly from what's in the final account. So we used the template that was provided by our Treasury Management Specialist, which essentially says that what we do is we remove the amount which we have funded through leases, and we've got quite a big lease that's linked to the Colchester Northern Gateway Leisure Park. So essentially that's not included in here, and that's why there is a difference between what's in the published accounts and what you see within the table at Table 3. And I will also fall on my sword here. There's been a bit of a mistake in terms of what our external borrowing is, and when this report's brought to full council, essentially what it will do is it will correct it, and it shows what our external borrowing is on a year by year basis, and then what we're funding from internal borrowing. I'm going to try and share my screen now so you can see essentially what the numbers look like. And apologies, I keep bombing out every time I share my screen, so bear with me. So hopefully you can see this table in front of you. And what this essentially says is that our overall CFR, our borrowing requirement, is this line, which is the third line down, starting to 249.7 million. That's funded by external borrowing of 191 million and internal borrowing of 58 million. What this means is this external borrowing limit, this is the amount of money we're actually going out and borrowing once we take account of net investments and internal borrowing requirement. So by the time we get to the end of 2030, our actual external borrowing would be 387.2 million if the capital programme that this is based on is approved in February, and if we actually deliver that capital programme over the period. So what I will mention as well at this point is that it seems like an awful lot of money. A large proportion of that is within the HRA, the Housing Revenue Account, and any borrowing that we take has to conform to the Prudential Code. Section 151 officer has to sign it off, has to say it's affordable, sustainable, and prudent in order to do that. And the way we do this is we make sure that we do financial appraisals every time we take out large amounts of borrowing to ensure that if we're borrowing for development, for example, that development can meet the cost of delivering that development, maintaining the development, and also being able to meet the cost of funding that goes into it. As I say, members are asked to consider the Treasury Management framework, if you like, of the report, but it's not being approved by governance. You're not recommending it to full council. That it's at full council that the governance that the Treasury Management strategy is actually approved. But you're asked to consider it at this meeting today. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Wayne, and thank you for the clarity in the report. Councillor Dundas first.
Thanks, Wayne, and thank you for the clarity on table 3, because you won't be surprised that was the first thing I was going to mention, because I was quite confused by it, and I think your new table goes a long way to explaining some of my questions. Because when I saw that internal borrowing going up, I was thinking, good gracious, have we found something down the sofa or something we can borrow from? But I just wondered if you could just, going back to first principles, perhaps talk through the narrative, the explanation of the committee. We've got the balance sheet resources line in there now. On the original table, it doesn't really change very much. It's around 91 million. But I think the table you just put up, that the figures are going up quite substantially. Could you just sort of talk through exactly what balance sheet resources is for the, in layman's terms, just for the committee?
Yeah, so the revised table that I've got has actually removed that. The reason why there was a mistake in the table 3, sorry, I'm getting feedback myself here. The reason why we've got an error in the table is that we were mixing up 2 accounting philosophies. One was around the HRA, which is treated very differently to the way that we treat the general fund. So the report in table 3 effectively needs to be deleted. The capital, the balance sheet resources, it's an anomaly, and it was chucking out a strange number because we were mixing up accounting principles. So you'll see the table that I shared earlier on, that's now disappeared. So essentially what you have is you have your CFR, which is our cash requirement that we need, and it's funded by external borrowing or internal resources, which we use. So table 3 will be deleted from the report when it appears in full council, and we will instead replace it with a table which I produced or just shared just a moment ago. So the balance sheet resources is a red herring on the report, and it should never have been in the report, and I will fall on my sword. It shouldn't have been in there.
Wayne, can I ask that the updated table is sent to all members just so that they can see a hard copy?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, Councillor
I was
Dundas.
just going to say, I don't want anybody to fall on any swords. This is a big document, and everybody makes mistakes, including me on a number of occasions. I think, I just think when that table is finally presented, I think just any extra narratives or explanations for councillors which can be given for exactly what the terminology means would be valuable, because I think phrases like HRA CFR, and borrowing CFR, I think it needs to be laid out very clearly exactly what we've got in the bank, exactly what we're going out to borrow, and exactly what we're spending. Because I think, indeed, for the members of the public, because it's a public document, they'll be reading it. I think just a clear narrative of what each line means would be welcome.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Sunnox, did you want to?
Yeah, I'm just very, very pleased to see that we have a report. We haven't seen anything in writing yet, but seeing it on the screen, looking on the screen, that's making massively more sense. What we have in the report in front of us just wildly doesn't make sense. And a question I'd ask is, the Cabinet's going to approve this budget in about a week's time. Would it not be wise to have an amended version of this report with the new table in it and an explanation of it, and focus on the 387 million, I've only seen it on the screen, I think it was 387 million of borrowing at the end of the 5-year period, and look at that. And I think that the biggest job this committee has to do is look at the risk profile of the business, of the council. Are borrowing now about 190 million, going up to 387 million. That's doubling our borrowing, and I think that there should be some consideration before the Cabinet goes around approving its large budget, which is its prerogative, but it is our job to make sure that they've understood that figure, what it means, and why we think it's affordable. And I've looked through the report, Wayne, you said it explains how it's affordable in the narrative. I don't see either the affordability of the 50 odd million of extra borrowing in the general fund, or the affordability, the general fund showing a deficit in 5 years' time. How will that ever be repaid? And certainly what we've got in the HRA, all we're seeing there is debt going up forever and ever, just up to the sky. How will that ever be repaid? And the key thing this committee needs to consider is, what evidence do we have that's affordable? Are we exercising our judgment in saying whether it is? Are we, we can't just delegate this to the Section 151. This is our reputations as individuals on the line, particularly those of us with a financial qualification. We absolutely have to focus on that 387 million. What does it mean, and can we afford it?
Can I, so if I can answer the question around affordability. So essentially the reason why, and I didn't get to put the slides up and you couldn't see it, but do you remember I talked about how the Treasury Management Strategy, the Capital Strategy, the Capital Programme and the Revenue Budget all have a symbiotic relationship? So the Capital Programme is essentially saying this is what we're spending our money on. It also has in there how it's funded. The revenue implication of that features in the revenue budget, and that's why the Treasury Management Strategy, Capital Strategy, TMS, and the revenue budget are all considered as one, along with the HRA business plan. So what you'll see when you see the revenue budget is the cost of our financing charges increasing, because the amount of borrowing we're taking is increasing. So in the general fund, you'll see the impact of MRP, and you'll see the impact of interest payable. And what's also going on is where we're paying some of this borrowing as we go as well. in the HRA, when you look at the HRA business plan, you'll see again their capital program borrowing going up. But in the HRA, you don't make MRP. You don't in the same way you do in the general fund. So what you'll see is a line within the HRA business plan of interest payable also going up as we borrow more money. So that's how those all tie together. And that's why I said to you, the numbers within the Treasury Management Strategy you've got here today are numbers that could change, because if the administration make another decision about what they want to do in the capital programme, that has a knock-on effect to the other three documents that you're going to consider at full council. So the ones that we published yesterday for scrutiny essentially tie together, and you have to read all four of them, and you'll notice in the MTFF the financing charges are increasing because we're growing, because we're spending more money in our capital program and financing much more growing, if that helps. So I'm sorry, just one final point about we can't just leave it to the Section 151 officer to approve it. So essentially what you're doing is full council, you're approving the capital programme and you're approving the revenue budget. What the Section 151 officer does is they ensure that when a financial appraisal is out, when we actually come to spend the money, that that it's in line with what you as the full council, as councillors, have approved that we can actually spend, and that it is still in line with the potential code.
Okay, William, did you want to respond?
Yes, Wayne, I'm not questioning the link between the capital budget and the revenue account. We seem to have that working properly now, and that's a great improvement. What I'm questioning is the sort of almost addiction to debt. We're having to borrow money to pay the interest on what we've borrowed, and the further you go down the road, the more you've got to borrow to pay an even bigger interest bill. And I'm not sure that this is understood by those making decisions on the capital budget. It's great fun having capital budgets that are like double our neighbours or nearly 3 times our neighbours. But I don't think anyone's evaluated whether that's actually affordable. And then the controls we're meant to have, we've got all sorts of language about prudential limits and authorised limits and so on, but we're setting them at such high levels. It's like we're setting them at about 350 million or something when our debt's currently 191 million. Yeah. I feel that as a committee, should be a committee concerned with financial control and discipline, we should be setting those a lot more tightly, maybe 325 million for the operating limit, maybe 375 million for the authorised limit, in that sort of order, so that we have some limits. It just seems that as we sit at the moment, we can go to the PWLB and borrow as much as we want, that we don't have any effective limits on it, we don't have any audited accounts, and we don't have any real discipline about how this borrowing will ever be paid back. I think this is a major thing. I think it's the biggest thing this committee has to consider in the whole year. If we get the accounts wrong, that's bits of paper. If we get this wrong, we're leading ourselves into more and more debt. We're encouraging the Cabinet to have confidence where they shouldn't have confidence, and we're not doing our duty to exercise our experience and judgment on whether this sort of level of debt is sustainable.
Wayne,
Okay.
did you want to come back on that?
Yes. So essentially, the operational boundary, the 330 million that you were mentioning, is a construct of a calculation that's been performed by our Treasury Management consultants that basically says you could, if you maxed out your borrowing, and you could go to 330 million. What members are approving is what is in the budget and what is in the capital programme and how we're funding it. And your catch-all as members is that we couldn't go out and borrow 330 million tomorrow without it coming back to full council and you reapproving what was in the capital programme and the revenue budget. It would have to be approved by full council. So although the operational boundary is 330 million, that sets your borrowing need. We couldn't actually go out and borrow that money until it came back to full council and we proved to you that it was in line with the Prudential Code, affordable, sustainable and prudent to do so. We'd have to do that every single time. The other thing is we can only borrow to fund capital expenditure as well, which is a key point to this. And again, the spending money on capital again is a full council decision. So all members have to approve the capital. Well, a majority rule within full council has to be approved at that point. So we couldn't, member officers and the administration couldn't go out and just borrow money without it being brought back to full council. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, William, I mean, my view here is that we've got a difference of opinion in terms of what I think we should be doing here, which is I think we should be drawing a distinction between the framework and the process, the actual strategy document, and any sort of challenge to the actual numbers contained within, and they will be going through scrutiny and to full council for that very reason. I mean, I'm happy to take a note in the minutes, but I think that we need to agree as a committee whether we're happy to accept the Treasury Management Strategy as it stands and move on. Yeah, Councillor Dundas.
Well, I think the problem is that the document in the agenda and the document we've considered tonight, we already know is incorrect. So I don't think we can approve it as it stands.
Okay, can I take advice then on what we could do? Because we've obviously got a short timeline, haven't we, before this goes to Cabinet?
I mean, you're not asked to approve. You're not being asked to approve it. What you're being asked to do is consider it and consider the framework. The actual approval of it is at full council.
Okay, no, I understand that. Thanks very much. Has anyone else got anything else they'd like to add? Yes, Councillor Sonnet.
Yes. Sorry, this is quite important, and I think it does merit a little time, Chair. I appreciate there are capital controls and that we can't exceed our capital budgets without going back to full council. I do understand that. Capital budgets are huge. I don't think they're any effective control at all. Over the borrowing side, about a year ago, we went out and we borrowed 43 million. That came as a complete surprise to this committee after the budget. We didn't know that anyone had gone out and borrowed 43 million in the name of the council. There wasn't anything in the previous Treasury management statements. It just sort of appeared. That 43 million is coming up for refinancing next month. That's something that I think this committee should know about. When we've been told in general terms that we're going to be refinancing it short. But I think we should know a little bit more detail about what sort of rate we think we might get, whether we're going to do it for 1 month or whether we're going to do it for 1 year or 5 years. I feel we should have more control of the borrowing side irrespective of the capital side. I can't see any point in having all these limits and having them so high that they don't effectively constrain anything. So what I'd like to suggest is that we are being asked to note this report, aren't we? Can I suggest we note the report and express concern about, first of all, the numbers have fundamentally changed. We haven't even got a piece of paper with the new numbers in front of us. I think we should note that it doesn't work as it is, that the borrowing limits are too high, and that this needs a substantial rethink before any budget is approved by any cabinet.
I'm going to have to say I'm not sure I agree with all of that. I'm happy to say that note that we haven't got the figures in front of us, but I think as a strategy and for the reasons Wayne's explained, I'm happy to note it and move forward. How do other members of the committee feel? Okay, Councillor Dundas.
I mean, I think we certainly have to somewhere record that the document which is going to go to Cabinet is different to the one
Yes.
we
No,
viewed tonight.
to do that. Okay, Councillor Harris, did you want to?
I just wanted to support that view, Chair. For me, some of the language tonight, I think, was expressing concern over the staffing or the qualifications or the professionalism of our officers and this process. I can see the difference, if others can't, that there is a different rules applying to HRA as opposed to the general fund, and I recognise that. I'm happy to note without reservation this report and move it forward if that's what you're looking for, Chair, as a proposer. As far as I'm concerned, I thank the officers for what they're doing and doing all the explanations they've done. It is what it is and has to go to full council. I know there's one table in there that looks at, but I've had it looked at and I've looked at that and studied that and the changes. And for me, it's sound.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yep, Councillor
Well,
Dundas.
I would just say, don't like to disagree, but that is a very important table because it effectively shows what we as an organisation, our debt level and borrowing is going to be and where we're borrowing it from over the coming 5 years. Now, I know in practice we won't be here in 5 years' time, but nonetheless, that is what we're considering. So that we shouldn't underplay the importance of that table. That's probably the crux of the whole document, really, if we're being honest.
Okay, so if
Can
I
I-
propose that
can I-
we move...
So can I just make a point about that comment? So I mentioned the very first thing I said when I presented the report is don't look at the numbers in the report, because the administration tomorrow turn around and go, actually, we don't want to do half the things that we want to do in the capital programme, and we're going to do something completely else. And what you've got is a timing error. So you're bringing the report to G&A, but you haven't actually got a capital programme that's actually been approved. It's still got to go through scrutiny. It's going through cabinet, and then it will go to full council. And that's why the number. I mean, I could use the lottery numbers in that table, and they're probably just as meaningful. Once you get to the full council, that's when the table is actually should be accurate, because it should tie up with the revenue budget, capital strategy, and the capital programme. So that's why I mentioned straight away, don't look at the numbers in the report, because they're subject to change, and the administration could make a decision tomorrow to actually halve the capital programme, or they could make a change. They could make a decision to double it. Until it goes to full council, the numbers are pretty meaningless. What I will say is the calculation in the table in table 3 was wrong, and I would accept responsibility for that. But the numbers, what we're going to spend may differ.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Sunnox.
Yes, first of all, nothing I've said. I'm getting really fed up with people saying that I'm criticising officers when I'm not. I realise they're working very hard and doing the things to the best of their ability. I'm not criticising officers, and I'm getting fed up when I make a substantial point with it being diverted into a discussion about how things are said instead of what is being said. This is pretty damned important, and we need to focus on the issues and not the way things are said. The second thing is, I'm completely not happy to note a report and put it forward to a cabinet that's going to make some important decisions about the budget. The numbers are broadly in line with the budget numbers proposed for next week. I don't say I've been able to check everything, but broadly there's a huge capital programme. We've just seen the numbers coming out, I think yesterday, for the numbers are very much in line. We've still got a massive overweight capital programme that's going forward next week, and it's our job. If we didn't look at the numbers, I absolutely can't be any part of this. I will certainly be voting against noting this report without any comment at all. I think we are absolutely to be looking at the huge movements in these key numbers without commenting or anything is a complete abrogation of the duties of the Governance and Audit Committee. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Paul, did you want to just run past us again what note you were asking for?
Well, I think probably keep it quite simple and just say that the committee acknowledges that this isn't the final version of the document, and there have been updates subsequent to it being the agenda being published. Because I think I know I do get what Wayne's saying. I probably addicted to the numbers. I tend to look at the numbers first, even when I'm told not to. That's just a bad habit. But nonetheless, you know, there have been changes compared to what we had in the agenda pack, and the draft, you know, the agenda and the draft budget has now been published. It's on the website going to cabinet. So, as William was saying, you know, that kind of is the now, unless cabinet decide on the 28th, whenever it is, you know what, we're going to rip up this entire capital programme and rewrite it this evening, which they may well do. It's their prerogative, but it would be quite unusual if they did. I assume they might have seen it or discussed it before. That's a bigger question if they haven't. Then probably what we're seeing on those figures is likely to be pretty much substantially what the capital budget's going to be taken forward to full council at the end of February. So, you know, I think I'm kind of agreeing with everybody here and sitting on the fence, but I think the figures are relevant, although I do understand that until they're actually voted on and finalised, the capital budget is not the capital budget. So.
Okay, well, looking at the agenda item, we're being asked not to note but to consider, and I think we have considered. So subject to everybody's agreement, I'm happy to take that note and move on to the next item.
Sorry, Chair. I'd like to have it on record as to who's voted for this and who's voted against it.
Okay,
and I think it does. I thought it did say that we were asked to note it.
No, it does say actually we'll consider a report. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think we should consider it, and if it doesn't have any qualification to it, I'd like to have my vote recorded firmly against it. I can have no part of this.
Okay, no, I'm happy to accept that. Is everybody else happy to vote in favour? Yeah. Okay, agree.
Sorry, we need a vote. We need it recorded who is supporting this and who is not.
Chair, does this actually require a vote if we're just considering it?
We're just considering it, yes. So I think consider it subject to the note that you've made, yeah. So we're happy with that and we can move forward. Okay, William will.
I want it minuted that I do not support this report and that it needs major reconsideration before it goes to Cabinet, in my view.
Okay, thank you very much, William. That's noted. Wayne, do you want to move on to the next item, which I think is the Q3 update for 25-26?
Yes, so I won't go into this in too much detail. So members have had the report. Essentially, this basically looks at the prudential indicators that we would have put in the Treasury Management Strategy for last year. I'm happy to report I haven't got any breaches of our prudential indicators. And if you have a look at the report, it basically sets out that we are in line with all of those set out in the February 2025 Treasury Management Strategy. I'm happy to take any questions from members on the report.
Again, we're being asked to note this report. Has anybody got any particular questions on the Q3? No, doesn't look like it, in which case I think we can note the report. And thank you, Wayne and Zoe and Hussein, who've also joined us this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot.
I don't know where we are with time. Yeah, we're all right. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is a verbal update from the Council's external auditor, KPMG. We did meet with them for a pre-brief yesterday. Unfortunately, neither of them are able to attend this evening. So what I was intending to do is just give a brief overview of what came up last night, and then I'll open the floor to any comments. So in the absence of KPMG and for the benefit of those present and online, here's a quick overview of the briefing we received from Emma Larkham of KPMG last night, that 25-26 accounts will remain heavily disclaimed as we have expected. However, there's good engagement with the officers and good progress being made. Income and expenditure, they have assurance in some areas. Journal sampling is completed. And there are some areas such as valuations that won't be complete, and the turnstone question remains challenging, but pensions will be fully audited. She did note that staff churn has impacted some of the carry forward knowledge and made some of the job much more complicated, that the HRA will not be a complete audit due to outstanding valuation queries, but they are comfortable with the principle and position of the HRA. She felt that Savills at the last meeting gave good detailed and explained well, and that a secondary review they have asked to be done because of concerns are happy that it's working as it should be. So that's really where we are with the update that we had, and as far as I know the timetable is where it should be. Does anybody have any particular comments that they wish to make? Yes, Natalie.
Yeah, just as you mentioned the churn, I think we need to sort of bottom out why that's happening. Is it a culture thing? Is it remuneration? Just to find out why we, you know, and we struggle to recruit and retain finance officers, and potentially, as I say, the impacts of local government reforms having on that, and what that could mean for the short term and the long term future.
Yeah, I agree. Lindsay, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I can provide a short update, but probably warrants a fuller one following the meeting. But I mean, I think it's fair to say it's not an issue that just affects Colchester. Recruiting qualified finance staff, and we're fortunate to have some of them on the line, but it's a very competitive market. It's very difficult to recruit, especially those that have what I call the chief accountant skills. Those are incredibly hard to recruit. We did a full microsite on the last round of recruitment, and only managed to fill 2 roles. So, you know, we will continue to look for the right level of skill, experience and expertise, but it is very, very difficult to secure finance staff. I think it's probably also fair to say we're looking to other authorities as well. So we know that Essex has a particularly strong finance team, and conversations are already underway, given the future as well, to see whether there are people who are looking for other opportunities and might want to second, etc. So we're exhausting every opportunity to try and get some stability. We have been very fortunate to have, particularly those that are online, the benefit of their expertise. What you do get from interim staff is a huge amount of experience and expertise, but I think it's fair to pull up the point that the continuity and the carry forward is difficult. But of course all of the work is overseen by senior board as well, so there is a continuity there to just reassure members, but it remains a challenge in that space, not just for us, for most authorities.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any particular questions? Yep, Councillor Dundas.
Yeah, just on that, I mean, I think it's fair to say that KPMG did say, because I think the question was asked about staff retention and rotation or whatever, whether Colchester was an outliner in terms of Essex and other authorities, and they did actually say yes, they were. You know, other local authorities in Essex are undergoing LGR of exactly the same nature as we are, so we can't really use that as a reason, because it's not unique to us. I don't think we've really got to the bottom of why, but what we have to accept that they were quite clear that Colchester has more of a retention problem and more of a churn of staff in its finance department than other local authority or comparable local authorities. The other comment I was going to make, but we mentioned Turnstone. I'm quite surprised they haven't really sorted that out, because to my mind it is quite simple what it is in terms of the actual setup. We have a debt and we have an asset, and they both sit on the balance sheet. The only debate is perhaps the ratio between those, whether they're the same or different or whatever. But to my mind, particularly as we have an obligation, I think I'm right in saying, to purchase at the end of the period, I'm surprised that they haven't really come to a conclusion on that. And I do wonder if perhaps it's either they haven't asked the right questions, or it hasn't been explained to them in clear terms what the actual contract and setup of that project is, because I think if it was explained to them, or they had the details, or they would come to a very quick conclusion, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. I think she did say that they were expecting an answer in the next week or so on that. Councillor Sunnucks?
Yes, I think I'm right in saying that the deadline for submitting these accounts, the statutory deadline, is the 27th of February. And we've only got one more Governance and Audit Committee before then, which is the 24th of February. In the past, we've been rushed into approving accounts, which we haven't properly considered. In this case, it looks as if on pensions we've got an adjustment of about £60 million to our balance sheet coming up, which is absolutely material, and we should understand it. I know it doesn't affect us operationally, but I feel this committee should understand it. It's a number, I know, and some people don't like numbers, but it's a big number. The second thing is on Turnstone, there's an adjustment of in the order of 30 million coming up. So we've got a 60 million, we've got a 30 million. We've also got an HRA where KPMG have done some work, and they've said that technically, according to the rules, the way we're doing our accounting is allowed. But they qualified that heavily with saying they haven't done an audit yet. And this is important because when they do an audit, they're required to respect true and fair. And I was actually trained by KPMG's predecessor, Pete Mark Mitchell, and that was the absolute guiding light. So until they've looked at the figures, until they've looked at the detail of these huge numbers going around the place, I don't think we can have... I personally have severe doubts about whether the way we've done our accounts in the HRA shows a true and fair view. And when I see the way that that treatment is adopted for the future, for the HRA business plan, and the way Savills has developed a highly technical accounting treatment into a golden rule, which is not a golden rule, it's a sort of lead rule, it's a sink to the bottom type rule. When I see the way that's been, in my view, misinterpreted, I think it's really worrying that we could see when there's a proper audit done, we could see real problems on the HRA. And I don't think we can have any confidence about the amount we're spending and the way the HRA works until we have that proper audit, which doesn't seem to be coming for a long time. So 3 big things to consider when those accounts get approved, and I hope that we'll get them in advance of the audit meeting so we have time to look at them. Maybe we even need a briefing of them before the meeting. You know, we should really take this seriously this time and not allow us to be rushed at the last minute into, you know, and to be told, oh, well, we're going to be in breach of a statutory deadline if we don't approve something that we don't agree with.
We will have a pre-briefing on the 24th, which is the night of the GNA meeting.
Yes, Chair. So there has already been set up an accounts workshop, which the Section 151 likes to run. That is scheduled at the moment for the evening of the 24th, but when the Section 151 is back in the office, there will be discussions about bringing that forward to the Monday previously, and KPMG have asked to have a meeting with the committee ahead of the meeting on the 24th as well.
We certainly need it earlier so that people have time to consider it, and so we're not rushed at the last minute.
No, I agree. I think it needs a proper consideration. Yeah, Councillor Harris, did you want to say something?
Yes, please, Chair. I was on the meeting last night, as other councillors were, and very interesting report, and some of the confidence was there on a lot of it, and a lot of the things they've already done, and highlighted the items that needed more attention on. I think that's right and proper. That report came to you, Chair, in that meeting the way it did. I'm sorry she's not here tonight, because I sort of got a lot of confidence from her about the way the audit was done. Savills, let's not forget, the way that we manage our HRA account is controlled by Savills. Savills are no slouches on doing this. They do this around more authority than this. So they know what they're doing. They run it as per the LGA rules and regulations go, And as far as I'm concerned, I asked a very sound question last night of the auditor. Did she lack any confidence, or could she give us confidence on what she'd already been tested and the future going forward? Was there any worries? These are professional auditors who know what they're looking at. When you look under a stone, you must have some idea, if you've been doing it for some time with a profession, whether something's going to come scuttling out. And she answered to say no, she expected to find good practices going on and confidence in our officers and the processes we've got. Savills do a great job around the area. They manage with the updated HRA that we have, and the way they've set out the way we manage it is part of the industry standard. So I've got confidence in what the auditor told me last night, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The item is to note the verbal update. Are we happy to do so and move on? Okay, thank you very much. So the next item 8 is the work programme for 25-26. Details of the reports that are scheduled for each meeting during the new municipal year. Anything that we need to be aware of?
Thanks, Chair. No, I'll take the report as read. The committee will see there has been a bit of movement on reports coming to the committee. They've been delayed over and deferred really till the next meeting in February and then in March. So unless there's anything specific the committee wishes to raise, I'll just ask that the report be noted. Thank you.
Okay, everybody happy to... Oh, yeah, Councillor Harris.
Yes, I'm happy to do that, Chair, propose that. But of course, just bearing in mind what was said by yourself and Councillor Sunnick just now about that meeting that was scheduled, would that be able to be factored in so that we could bring that forward a few days? Have we got more time to look at that? Is that possible?
Okay.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
That's lovely then. So that brings this evening to an end. Thank you to everybody who's attended online and those in the room, and look forward to seeing you in February.